So the third domain is the linguistic principles. And so we have seen how language actually can be related to the brain, to the heart, and now to the language itself, the language system. All right. So the first one is the native language effect. Um, native language effect, right? So the interference of the first language is actually seen very clearly among many of the Malaysian students. Why? Because most of us, English is our second language. For some, it's a third language. All right, your mother tongue is always your first language. So that interference, right, in terms of the structure, in terms of the production, all right, it makes a difference actually. What is your first language and how it affects your second language learning. Okay, so the native language effect is there. Interlanguage, right? So because of your native language or your first language, your mother tongue, there is this problem of interlanguage development. Okay, you kind of cross your first language and the second together, and then you use it. So, for example, okay, when you meet someone, there's this tendency to ask this question like around lunchtime, and you say, "Dah makan?" Is this a common statement?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. How would you translate that in English if you meet your friend and you want to say it in English? The statement in Malay is dah makan. How would you translate that?
Have you eaten?
Have you eaten?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the direct translation would be have you eaten? Of course I have eaten. When you think about it, all right, logically, if have you eaten? Yeah, of course, everyone eats. Have you eaten? What do you mean by have you eaten? All right. So in terms of the English language, have you eaten does not have make sense. All right. It's like ridiculing question, you know. It's not really asking me if I have had my lunch. Have you had your lunch? But then we directly translate. And because it is an acceptable statement, it's a statement you understand. You don't need to explain. Have you eaten? No, I haven't. Right? Oh, I'm going to. Okay. That's a norm, and we can understand each other because that is very much an interlanguage. So here in Malaysia, we call it the Manglish. All right. But anyway, sometimes it's a good way to start learning the language because you first directly translate and then you slowly move towards using the language properly. All right. So whenever you hear students using Manglish in class, you have to be a bit careful because you have to help them place the language correctly. All right. You have to help them correct it. Otherwise, if you leave it, they will leave school thinking that that is the right way to use the language. All right. So interlanguage is also a linguistic principle. Because we are dealing with second language learners, there is this problem of mixing the language. One is the nature of the first language effect, all right? We call it the first language interference or the mother tongue interference. And then we have the interlanguage because you use both the language in the sentence, all right? Or you translate it. Next is the communicative competence. Okay, this is the last one. Communicative competence here can be looked at from 4 areas. Organizational competence, like how well you organize your thoughts, all right? What to say first, what to say next, and how to end it. Strategic competence, like what's the right word to say in that situation. Psychomotor skills competence. Psychomotor is actually more of movement, all right? But this, in terms of competence, communicative competence is more like your body language. Because we don't move so much as in physically moving, but the physical movement that you would do when you communicate is basically your body language. Okay, and the last one is pragmatic competence. Okay, tell me, what is pragmatic? What do you understand by pragmatic? Any idea?
I think the ability to understand what people means when they're speaking. Like some people, they don't say, they don't mean what they say, like in literally. But when when we try to understand them um, deeper than what they say, then that is what pragmatic means, I think.
Okay, good try. Right, pragmatic is basically about how practical it is to use the language. The pragmatic competence will depend on the context. Your ability to look at the context and the language used and how it's connected. All right. For example, when you're having a presentation, a business presentation, the jargon that you would use, for example, like return of investment, you can actually use the uh, initials. You can say ROI, and everyone will understand because that is the level of the group that is involved, because they are talking about investments and they are all in the business, so you can actually use jargons, right? But if you're talking to students in primary school, you can't use such terms or abbreviations, but you need to explain in a more simplistic manner. All right, so that pragmatic competence is important. You must know how to use the language in which kind of situation or context. All right, so the contextual analysis, the analysis of the context is important. All right, for communicative competence. So basically, for linguistics, it's about your first language interference. It's also about how you mix the language to make sense, and the communicative competence. All right. Any questions?